Hey guys, Yankee here, and today I want to be giving my thoughts on Tenchi Muyo Ryo-Ohki OVA 3 Episode 2. I've tried to record this video like 5 times, going through my notes chronologically, and it's been a mess every time, so I want to try doing it a little different. This episode is basically just introducing characters, and so I'm going to talk about each character sort of in the order they pop up. So, but before I even talk about that, I want to talk about something Yosho says much later in the episode. And that's basically an explanation of why you didn't know about all these family members until now. And the gist of it is basically, Jurians aren't supposed to interfere with developing civilizations, but also we live here on Earth, we're Earthlings, so we're sort of in a weird spot here. So we wait until kids grow up and are adults, let them live a life as Earthlings, and then sort of bring them in. Tell them we're aliens from space, and, once people learn that, a lot of them go into space, but usually they also come back and just sort of get a disguise and blend back in. So Tenchi, who was a child, and I think he's only 16 or 17 in OVA 3, wouldn't have known about all of this weird stuff until now anyway, which seems like it could be a bit of an excuse for just why these characters didn't exist until now, but it also makes sense, because it's not like in OVA 1 Tenchi knew all this stuff about Jirai and whatnot. He just sort of stumbled into it, right? So they sort of explain it away. Some people might think it's a bit lazy, some people might think it's fine. I think it's, fine. So now, we're going to talk about this episode going through the characters, because we get 3 new characters put in here. The first one is Tenyo. Who is Tenyo? Episode 1 of OVA 3 ended with Tenchi coming face to face with his mom, and this OVA opens up with that, this episode, and Tenchi cries, like he would, and then we quickly reveal that the woman in front of him wasn't actually his mother, it is his older sister. Her name is Tenyo, and she is 80 years old, and that's sort of the reason why they explain away why she hasn't been around, right? You can't have Tenchi knowing he has an 80-year-old sister. She grew up on Earth. She has people she grew up with around here who are all old people now. So they sort of kept it a secret, and she has just been in space, and occasionally when Tenchi was a kid, she would sort of swap places with her mother because they looked so similar, and would take care of him for a bit. So that's Tenyo. We don't get a whole lot of her here. A lot of this episode is just the characters coming here and fawning over Tenchi, right? So, like, Tenyo's his older sister. She finally gets to meet him and interact with him as a sister, and she is just enjoying that, right? The next character brought in is Airi. That is Yosho's wife and Tenchi's grandmother. And don't call her grandmother. She does not like that. And she doesn't like being called old in general. There's a really funny scene where Tenyo explains, like, yeah, I'm here, but we're also here to introduce you to your fiancé. And Ryoko and Aika and them are obviously unhappy about this news. And then Airi shows up, and Ryoko just starts going off. It's like, they're going to make Tenchi marry this old hag? Like, what's wrong with them? And Airi does not take kindly to that. So we're introduced to her, Yosho's wife, from True Tenchi Muyo Volume 2, Yosho. That's where she was introduced. And we don't really get much more about her than that. There's a brief mention of how Yosho and Airi met, and this is the first time I'm watching this after reading the True Tenchi novels, so having them mention, like, oh yes, Yosho and Airi met when he went to Galaxy Academy when he was a child. I'm sure the first and second time I watched this, when I hadn't read the novels, it was like, oh, okay, that's where they met, that's cool. But having read that now, it does add a lot, and it's nice to be like, oh yeah, that book I just read, oh, that's kind of cool, right? And there was also a brief mention of 2 things. They mentioned Seto. They don't really... She doesn't show up in this episode, but they mention her, and everybody's afraid of her. And then there's mention of Washu having a lot of brothers and sisters, which is something that's only briefly touched upon in True Tenchi Muyo Volume 3 Washu, where she grew up in an orphanage and had a lot of siblings there. So that's Irie. We don't really get a lot of her in this, just sort of explaining things, getting mad when people call her old, and that's it. And again, fawning over Tenchi like a grandmother. Nah, not quite like a grandmother would, but like more like the weird aunt that touches you a little too much. And then the final character that's introduced in this episode is Noike, who is the fiancé of Tenchi. She is Seto's daughter, it's mentioned, and she sort of ran away. Tenyo showed up to the house first to surprise Tenchi, and that went poorly. Then Irie showed up and explained that, yeah, Noike just sort of wandered off. We don't know where she is. And Tenchi also wandered off in all the commotion. He just sort of got tired and said, look, this is going to take a while. I'm going to go to the fields. And in the fields, he bumps into Noike. And their first meeting, she sees him, has a vision / flashback. Again, I've seen further in the show. I don't know exactly what I should call it right now in this second, right this second. But it's like a flashback, right? And then she calls him Oni-chan. So we get that. She faints. She's just a mess. And then after a while, she sort of comes to, talks to Tenchi for a minute, sees the carrots, tries them, and then offers to buy some, realizing she doesn't have any money. Tenchi just offers to give her some, and she says, no, I'll earn them. I'll help sort of mess with the fields for the time being until, to get some carrots. So that's fine. And then we bring her to the house, we have a meal, we get a bunch of interactions between her and the cast, and just sort of setting up her place in the family, right? So we set up that, okay, she's not going to take something for free, she's going to work for it. When she gets to the family, she's sort of bossy, I guess is a kind way to put it, where Aika and Ryoko are just sort of off, are just sitting in the kitchen, and she goes to help Sasami cook dinner, and she's like, Aika, Ryoko, get in here, you're gonna help. And so she's just sort of putting everybody on a leash and getting them to help out around the house. She has a history with Mihoshi. She was also in the Galaxy Academy, or not the Academy, she was in the Galaxy Police. So her and Mihoshi are former partners, and she's just kind of bossy. But yeah, that's basically the episode. It's just character introductions. And again, I'm talking sort of all over the place. It was a fun episode to watch, where it's just hey, here's this character, here's this other character. Oh, you thought this was the fiancé? No, we have another character to show. And it was fun how the characters were all introduced, and it was kind of chaotic, and just sort of seeing how they all function and interact, and expanding on the Masaki family, right? So we knew that the family was big because Yosho is Aika and Sasami's siblings, but we didn't know we didn't know the whole structure of the family. We didn't know much about Tenchi's mother. We're learning little bits about her. We didn't know Tenchi had a sister. Well, here she is. Things like that. So, and really just sort of bringing Tenchi a bit more into the, his side of the family. Again, they've mentioned in this episode, we kind of keep kids in the dark. Once they're adults, we tell them. And then a lot of them just go off into space. So this was a lot of explaining to Tenchi the mess that his family is. But yeah, let me look at my notes to see if there's anything else I want to mention. And I don't think there is. All I have here is that the marriage between Tenchi and Noike it's a political marriage, right? It's just, he is royalty, basically, and that just happens. And so they sort of, I think it was Tenyo that explains, it's look, yeah, you have a fiancé, it's set up by Seto, it's a political marriage, look at the family you're in, what would it be, the great-grandson of the current emperor, you gotta tough it up and deal with it. So, yeah, a fun episode to watch. A lot of chaos that makes it a bit difficult to explain. But overall, a fun episode. Really, though, it's showing, like, the art style is kind of funky in this. Like, I talked about it in the first episode where seeing it back to back with the old animation style in this one made it really jarring, but even in this episode, it's kind of odd looking. I do like Kajushima's art style. It's just, I don't know. It looks a bit weird in the OVA. But overall, a fun episode, and not really even a cliffhanger. We just get mentioned that Seto is coming, and then just a bunch of characters introduced, and we're gonna see what's going on with Noike and how she's going to fit into the family dynamic and what that means for everybody else now that Tenchi has a fiance. So yeah, a fun episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.